Akira.
Have you any hobbies?
My hobbies are fast cars and fast women.
Hobbies are healthy. They teach you things.
Are you ready? Are you ready?
You know, there's only one thing that can make me excited for a Monday, and it is, of course, another fantastic episode of Around the UFL. Hey, everybody, welcome in to the latest edition of our wonderful live show, Around the UFL, bringing you all the latest and greatest things from, of course, the United Football League. I'm Zach Kyleman, hosting, as always, along with an extremely packed guest of PFN personalities this week, including a new face that we haven't gotten a chance to formally introduce in here that I will go around the horn with. But yes, a wonderful show. It is now officially past week 6. We're heading towards week 7 now. The back half of the season is in full swing, and I'm already hearing the buzz about this next week with this massive matchup down in Birmingham, Alabama. We'll probably talk about that a little bit. We got a lot of stuff to recap from the week that was and many things that were as well. Getting things started, though, go around the horn. Got to talk to all of our panelists, as always. Kicking things off clockwise. Ducky, good to see you in, buddy. How you doing, man? Come on. Got to get that quota for the week. You know, the chat's waiting.
The 4 words per episode. Yeah. No, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Yeah.
Good to hear from you, dude, and glad to have him on, our resident funny man, popcorn eater, and I'd say producer, if you have to say so myself. James Larson, our resident insider on the other side, as always, and very much U.S. traveler, although a little bit calmed down as of the previous trip. We talked about that last week, but how are things going, man? Quite the show we're going to have, of course, and might be on a similar trip that you ended the show with last week once we get to a certain game.
Yeah, no, doing well. It was nice to have a week off from very far travel. This time was only 40 minutes to Ford Field, so that was, pretty simple compared to going to Texas or Memphis. So, yeah, doing well, excited, a lot to cover. A lot went down there in week 6.
Yeah, heck of a game going on there, and we're going to dive in so much more to that wild finish down at Ford Field. And obviously, Jake, as we bring in my own resident Panthers fan that I can associate very closely with every week to kind of bring the good or the bad. Jake, what the world, hell of a finish out there. We'll talk more, of course, about the game, but have you recovered from what was almost not a dub?
I was just about to say, I think my blood pressure is finally back to normal. That was, something I'm over. Like, that was fun week 10 last year. It was fun week 1 this year. I'm over these close calls, but apparently Panthers have to get these last second field goals over the blue XFL teams. So, we did it. That's the main thing. But yeah, my heart rate and blood pressure, I think, are finally back to normal.
It's never easy for us rooting for those guys in Detroit, but boy, do they make it fun this year, 4-2. We'll talk more about that game. I obviously have my thoughts as well. Meanwhile, Nick Thorne back with us, our resident roster analyzer, as I would put it. Good to see you, buddy. And no curtains. How's school treating you, man? Gotta ask.
Yeah, I was able to get away from it this week. I should hopefully be back on the show more consistently now, but everything's going well on that end, and I'm happy to be here.
Glad to have you on as well. And finally, I know we waited till the very end, Sam, but it's okay. We're glad you're here. It is Samuel Acom here joining us. Glad to have you on, man. And hey, been doing some great stuff on the videos lately, breaking down these games. I'm glad to have someone and everyone else is that we can kind of get an extra player voice now in the room too on the PFN crew. Glad to have you on board for this show.
Excited to be here, man. Appreciate you guys having me on, and I'm glad I was finally able to make it. I've been trying to get on the last couple of weeks, but just timing wasn't right. Glad you guys were having me, man.
Hey, life affects all of us. That's the deal.
I'm glad we got another former player on here because Ducky, being a former high school kicker, just wasn't going to cut it for the show. So there we go.
For real, you can't. Got to get someone that's been in the leagues, man. That's what we're saying. But glad to have you on, Sam. Glad to have you a part of PFN. That's what I can definitely say. It's great to have it. The crew keeps growing in the best ways possible. Every single week it gets better and better. And we got a hell of a week of UFL football to talk about. That again, stuff just seems to get better and better with the performance on field. It is truly impressive, the season that we have seen with some of the talent that's been out there, but also some of the play that's showing up there as well, week over week. And as we've done in recent weeks, opening the floor up, guys. Instant reacts to week 6. Of course, me and Jake, we have our own for the one in the room, fan-wise. But I was going to say, feels like this week kind of was just the setup to a tee off to a week 7 matchup that people have been pinning for 2 to 3 weeks now on the schedule.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I mean, I feel like right off the bat, as you mentioned, it feels like we've got 2 top teams. Birmingham, top team in the USFL conference. XFL has St. Louis, who's a top team there in that conference. that matchup, obviously, week 7 is going to be crucial. What I thought was rather interesting this weekend was that St. Louis, they showed some signs of weakness in that game. They won the game against Houston. They did a great job. But offensively, there were some weak points. Credit to the Roughnecks defense for stepping up and keeping them in arm's reach throughout most of that game. But I think it'll be interesting to watch. Birmingham's defense has been so dang good these last few weeks. That's something to keep an eye on heading down the stretch. But I guess, last week I ended the show with the phrase Arlington sucks. So I'll open up this show with the phrase Arlington still sucks. So that's a reaction.
Oh my God, he caught us off guard last week. That was a great Discord. I'll tell you, Discord loved that one. That was that was crisp. But look, it certainly feels like, and again, please feel free to jump in right after me on this. But again, we got highlighted this week. The two top teams are very much there with Birmingham and St. Louis. I will say St. Louis did surprise me that it was such a slow start to kind of finish things off. And Houston clearly is overmatched, as we did see the Hawks. But I was surprised to see that it was as close as it was for roughly 3.5 quarters. I don't know if anyone else feels the same way. Maybe it's just, a fluke here. I mean, credit. Birmingham also had a week that was 20-18 and had to pull a nail biter off against DC. So I'm not saying anything is guaranteed to be a blowout. We don't always hope for blowouts. We hope for competitive games. Just shocked me given that the disparity in the talent gap to those two squads to me is very, very wide. I feel like maybe not as wide as I'm implying, perhaps, but feels wide. Feels like there's a big gap there.
Anyone have any thoughts?
The floor is open.
I definitely have some thoughts. Are we talking about Battlehawks Roughnecks, just that game, solely that game?
I mean, hey, whatever you feel like you want to react to with the week. That's how we always lead off. But I've just kind of led the conversation to that piece, I think. Good way to tee off just what game is coming up next week, the big marquee matchup for supremacy in the league, honestly.
Right. I would rather talk about what James wants to talk about, which is the Arlington Renegades, because personally, I see Luis Perez as one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the league. Like, I genuinely do. I think it's, Matt Corral, Adrian Martinez are up there. Definitely AJ McCarron is up there. But, like, he's in that top 3-4. Like, he's leading the league in passing prior to last week. I don't know if he still is coming into this week. But, the dude has been balling. He's very efficient. He takes care of the football. We all know he's a great leader of that offense. I don't get it. What is the problem? What is the problem?
Ooh.
I'll tell you, the problem is coaching, it's personnel, it's just the decisions that they're making there. The fact that, I've talked about this before, you have some of your worst personnel groups from last year and you keep them the same. And specifically, the running back room is a great example where Davion Smith, Letty Brown, a couple, they did not have good averages last year. They really struggled. I know Davion Smith, he's great in the red zone, but that's what his purpose should be in those red zone situations. He should not be running back 1 in 2024. He still is. And we're seeing, the fruits of that coming out for Arlington, and they continue to lose. And like you said, I think Perez is one of the best quarterbacks in this league too. Now, I think Luis, the one area he struggles a bit is he's not mobile, which in these leagues you kind of need more of a mobile quarterback. But in the right system, Luis would still have success, and he is having success. He would have even more success if they actually built this team around him the way it should have been built. I feel like this offseason was a huge loss for the Arlington Renegades. That they did not upgrade the roster the way that they should have, and their 0-6 record speaks for itself.
How about that 4th and 1 late in the game on whenever they played? Was it Sunday? Yeah. How about that 4th and 1? Like, why not just punt it and try to pin them deep? Like, make them drive the length of the field.
That's the thing. It's these coaching decisions, man.
Well, they were getting yards on the Panthers, though. Like, they were being like, I thought it was a good decision because I did not expect the defense to be able to hold up. Now I'm thankful that Panthers defense showed up on that play. But I don't know. I guess with the way that I was feeling towards the game, that made perfect sense to me. But I could see where, our offense wasn't really moving much except for to bookend the game, towards the end and at the very beginning. Otherwise, in the middle of the game, Panthers weren't really moving it. But I still agree with the decision. Obviously, it worked out in my favor, but I don't know. I guess that wouldn't be what I would call the questionable decision, coaching decision. I thought that was their last drive, calling the timeout and then having that pass play to give Panthers a chance. I think those are the more questionable ones, not so much the 4th and 1.
I'll also jump in here because I think Arlington has another issue that we haven't really hit on, which is the injuries have killed them. Jalen Redmond is the one I really think of, but also I think they're missing 2 offensive linemen. They're definitely missing Bobby Evans, who was their best offensive lineman for the first half of the season. And it's like it happens like right in those groups that have like absolutely no depth. Like they were starting Will Clark, who's an edge rusher, at like a 5-tech DN. So like it's clear that like they have talent and like they're not that far off. We've seen them go up and compete with like most of the teams in the league. It's just those little things, and it feels almost nitpicky because they're not a bad team. They're definitely not an 0-6 squad, in my opinion. They should have won a few of these games, and they're not. And those little things, like you mentioned, the going for it on 4th down instead of punting, or, like having a poor play execution on that, like those little things, have it missing a few guys, those things add up. And I think, if they can just correct a few of those things, obviously the season's over, but like they can turn it around, especially because they have, I think they play Memphis this week. They have a very winnable game. But, it's I think the question now is just like Perez is great, but Perez is done after this year. Do you see what you have in the other guys? Do you just give them a shot just because, the season's over at this point? But, that's a whole other discussion.
Perez is done after this year?
That was said on, I think it was like week 3 on the broadcast that he said like he's going to give it one more go. And if he doesn't get to the NFL, then he's going to hang it up. That's what they said. Now, obviously, I mean, he is getting up there a little bit, 29, I think. But I think it's a thing of like he's been here longer than anybody. He was playing in the AAF, 5-6 years ago.
It's true.
So I think it's at a point where he's got to decide if it's one of those things of like you have to either decide to do another year of football or get a jump start on your next career. But like that was kind of the talk. And obviously he's saying that now. If it gets to December and he still feels that way, I mean, that might be something where maybe you can convince him to come back for another year. But certainly you have 2 young guys that you can absolutely, get a read on and see, and at minimum just give them some opportunity to play in front of NFL scouts, which I think probably is about time for them to do.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if I know you talk about him possibly having his career final weeks here come up. I wonder if that bowling career of his is still in play, as he was talking about in recent years. Because credit, I mean, he still keeps up with it, from what I understand. And I mean, it's a little less strenuous to have that, and he can jump right in and such. I'm not saying that's exactly what he's doing, but everyone's got life outside of football at some point, I guess, is the point I'm trying to make. I will tell you though, just to jump in with that conversation, it is so hard for me to watch Louise every week will this team to like within range of getting a win, and then somehow either the coaching staff finds a way to guide that towards a loss, or you have 1 or 2 miscues that are mental that happened and just completely biff it. This week in particular, with the freaking re-kick alone, is it 12 men on the field in that situation is mind-numbingly bad for the pedigree of Coach Bob Stoops is with how he's supposed to handle his staff. That just can't happen. I know that you don't just let Jake Bates do a redo after he shanks it left. It's this completely incompetent right there, and they literally, like they said on the broadcast, snatching away victory from the jaws of defeat is absolutely what that is. Brutal loss is the case, and it's getting harder. I mean, there's opportunities for a win clearly, but there's much more going on. Louise deserves much better than what has been going on over there with that roster for the Renegades.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I mean, we don't have to jump on the Renegades this entire show, but I think for Arlington, it's less of a talent and less of a talent issue and more of just a self-inflicted wounds, like you talked about. 12 men on the field, inexcusable. Not to mention on the kickoff return, you have a face mask on Marcus Sims that gives him an extra 15 yards. Bates, then the field goal attempt becomes much easier for Bates after that 15 yards was gained. It's those sorts of things. You look back just throughout most of their losses on these final plays, and they consistently, in critical moments, the defense has failed them. You look at week 2 against St. Louis, the defense lets them march right down the field. Potato Durant rips off that 50-yard run, seals the deal. Week 3, they have an opportunity to win. All they need to do is get one stop on the 4th and 12. The defense plays soft coverage. You give up a completion of Ty Scott. Then Deron Lowe, the very next play, tries to go for an interception instead of just playing defense, and Kelvin Harmon gets him in field goal range. It's just the same stuff week in and week out, and to me, it's those self-inflicted wounds that's a result of the coaching and the result of just the atmosphere in the organization, and it's not good.
No, it is definitely a travesty. Again,
I would
No, go ahead, Sam, please.
My bad. I'm super behind. I heard you give a shout out to my dog, Kelvin Harmon. And I would like to, or I heard you say his name. You didn't really give him a shout out. I'm going to give him a shout out. He came into training camp with us last year, and he kind of came in a little late. He didn't really get to learn the playbook enough, and he ended up getting cut last cuts. But I knew he had the talent. I knew he had the ability. I mean, he played in the NFL. He was a 6th-round draft pick, and, he's a swole dude, runs good routes, blocks his ass off. Like, he's a special teams guy 100%. So to see him ball out this season and to see him be like the marquee receiver for the defenders has been really refreshing, and it really warms my heart. Really warms my heart.
He talk about bowling, and I think it's a perfect way to kind of jump over to another game that I think might have raised a few eyebrows. More the result in terms of what it means for the XFL conference, and what comes down to the final stretch of the season. The DC defenders kind of get off the mat from, taking quite the beating last week. No denying that, and deliver what is probably to this point their most important victory of the season to keep pace for that number 2 spot. If they take the loss this week, as we were talking about leading up, it feels pretty hard, or at least it feels like that mirror or that view towards a playoff seed is starting to fade away into the sunset. But they simply found a way. James highlighted on Twitter, actually, I thought perfectly, that I was surprised that this Greg Williams defense came to play as much as so. And I said this on UFL podcast with Ref. I thought they were going to be dead in the water. That was actually one of my easy picks of the week I had. And sure enough, DC comes out. They come out to play and shut down the pass game. Yes, John Lovett has 153 yards running, and impressive performance nonetheless. But otherwise, elsewhere, a little bit of a disorganized Brahmas performance this week, and now it kind of opens a bit more of the door for that 2nd seed in the XFL conference. And technically, it opens it for both seeds, but you feel a little bit more wary about the 2 seed now, given that series split. And DC seemed to have found a little bit of a path forward here.
Hey, I got 2 words for you. Quentin Dormady. I have never been super high on him, just given his ups and downs with the Orlando Guardians last year. I know, Nick, we've talked about this before, where he is by no means a bad quarterback. He just does not protect the football in critical moments. And we've seen these last few weeks now, he's turned the ball over a few times. He had a couple missed throws against DC. I know he also opened up the game with an interception to Antula Kelly. It's those sorts of mistakes that is really hurting this team. And John Lovett played his ass off. He puts up 153 rushing yards, and your offense only gets 12 points out of it. Truthfully, it's strange to watch an AJ Smith offense struggle so much where you're 5 for 12 on 3rd downs. It just feels like the plays, average yards of play, only 4, give or take. I don't know. It feels like they're really missing Chase Garbers, and Quentin Dormady has not been the guy. And it makes you wonder, do you start looking to some of the other quarterbacks in that room? Do you give Kevin Hogan a shot? That's a guy that's been in the NFL for plenty of years, only started a couple games, but, he has the experience. And then you just signed Jaden Delora. That's a massive pickup, a guy that has a lot of talent, was eligible for this past NFL draft. With little time to waste in a season like this with just 10 weeks, I don't think Dormany's a championship quarterback, and you might want to look somewhere else before it's too late.
Yeah, I fully agree. Personally, I was shocked that they didn't bench Dormady during the game. I thought he was playing horrible for most of it, to the point where they kind of had to get the run game going because they just weren't making anything. And to the Greg Williams' credit, they were taking away a lot of the opportunities in the pass game, but there were also the occasional shot plays that he was just missing on. There was guys open that he wasn't hitting. And I would, for full disclosure, I was at that game, and that interception he threw to Nthula Kelly, I've joked that that I've thrown that pick in Madden 100 times, where it's that that corner, that flag route, and the cornerback who's shallow sees it and just kind of drifts back right into it. But he was a mess. But I also want to credit DC, because to me they made the moves they had to keep themselves alive. They completely redid this offense this week. 2.5 new starters on the offensive line. They moved their guard out to left tackle, and then they have a new right tackle and a new left guard. And from PFF and from me just visually watching them, graded out really well. They were able to run the ball for the first time really consistently all season. Darius Higgins, who's been kind of a reserve guy, looked really good this week. They're finally giving Ty Scott, snaps across from Harmon. And although he wasn't the main guy this week, I still think Scott played better than they have been getting at that, second wide receiver spot. So it's not pretty. Obviously, they still have some things to figure out. And I don't think they're they're not like a top tier team, but I think DC is starting to, find a way to win games. Whereas, they've been on this kind of slide after losing to Birmingham and St. Louis the last couple of weeks.
Yet to point out really quick on Ty Scott, I mean, that's something that I know Zach and I have emphasized, and you as well, Nick, and we've talked about it. Where has Ty Scott been? Why hasn't he been utilized? And I think it's interesting to point out where over the last few weeks, he only had 30 snaps. And then this past week, he had 45 snaps. So I love that DC got him involved. And I think we're seeing Kelvin Harmon emerge as wide receiver 1 because Ty Scott's on the field. Because Scott is such a threat, it's allowing Harmon to get a little bit more. He's getting a little bit less attention from DBs. It's allowing him to be more productive.
Yeah, Harmon's rise has been fantastic, and like I said with Sam, I'm glad to see he's getting his reps in and getting his due. It's been really special, and that has been one thing that they're finally clicking in, like we've all talked now, is they found a little bit of identity this week. It kind of felt like that offense found some semblance of what they want to be, and it kind of goes back to what we've discussed. Fred Keiss, he's the slow roll approach. He takes it a little slower this year than last, but he takes several weeks to kind of get what his personnel is, and then finally it just clicks. He goes, that's what I want to do. And then they start making it work. They actually got the run game to somewhat work this week too. I was like, hey, now we're talking. Okay, DC fans maybe getting off the mat. And if I want to add some more positivity, credit, schedule doesn't mean everything. Things can happen no matter what. But if we're looking at the rundown for the schedule, it's going to be a tight race to the second spot, if I'm being honest, unless an upset happens, which, hey, you never know. Because, weeks 9 and 10 for San Antonio, Birmingham and St. Louis back-to-back weeks to end the year. Remember, DC's already gotten through their matchup with Birmingham this year. They do have one more rematch in St. Louis, but beyond that, and I'm not slouching this as a schedule either, but Michigan next week, and then they end the year with Memphis and Arlington. Good Arlington team, at least in terms of competitiveness, and they're going to make it hard. But this is nowhere done now. With this victory this week, I'm serious, guys. That second seed in the XFL is really the one main playoff spot that I am keeping an analytical eye on the rest of the way forward, because it's going to get tight. This is not going to be a cut and paste who's getting what now. If San Antonio won this week, we could have maybe talked this a little differently. But now they pulled me back in. I am back into the fray.
Imagine
playoff competitive.
Imagine if the Brahmas and the Defenders lose every game going forward, and Arlington wins every game going forward. Can they get in?
God. James Baker,
they're not.
Chat.
Yeah, they can. They're not eliminated yet.
Eliminated.
That's insane.
I think
Yeah,
they'd have to
speak
go
on
to at
that.
least like
Opportunity.
I think they'd have to go through at least the third tiebreaker, which is the strength of victory. Which I mean, considering the games that they have in front of them, I guess it's a realistic possibility that Arlington could actually steal that that second seed. So yeah, Arlington is not technically out. That DC win actually also saved not only their season but Arlington's. Until this
Until
as
next
well.
week when they lose.
Yep.
I'm so glad you're giving Arlington fans this much hope. You've made one in particular very happy.
Hey, I've been doing that to Brandon as well with the Showboats, giving him just a little bit of hope, just knowing that it's probably not going to work out.
Give it a shot. Give it a shot.
One little technicality that I want to point out with the Brahmas that I find a little strange, and Sam, I'd love to get your opinion on this since you're a wide receiver. Jontre Kirkland has kind of been off these last couple of weeks, and it's felt like him and Dormady just haven't had the same chemistry that Kirkland and Garbers had. There's been, I'd say, probably 3 or 4 times now over the last couple of weeks where Kirkland has either dropped a deep ball or Dormady's just missed him when he's open. Like, those two just have not been on the same page, which is really hurting this offense because Kirkland is the highest targeted receiver in that room, and obviously Dormady as a starter right now is really hurting what A.J. Smith's trying to do.
Yeah, that's kind of tough because I know they talked about on the broadcast during week 1 with like Arlington and Luis Perez and Tyler Vaughns about how they worked together during the offseason because they both live in California, so they were able to get, reps together. But I don't know how many teams, how many receivers, and how many quarterbacks are really doing that. So it'd be one thing, like my original thought was like, well, maybe Garbers and Kirkland had a good relationship, had a good connection together, but I don't even know how true that could have been. Like their only reps could have been, 1 reps together during training camp. So I don't really know why Jonte Kirkland is not able to find success. It might be the relationship between Dormady and him. Like maybe they're just not on the same page. A lot of times that's what it is. It might speak volumes to who Dormady is as a quarterback. It might speak volumes to Jonte Kirkland and his ability not to get open. I mean, there could be many answers to why they're not being able to connect. It seems like he's getting open and he's dropping some of these passes. It's probably a mixture of a lot of things, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. It's just been confusing because, Kirkland jumped out of the gate with just so many receptions, so many targets, and he's still getting those targets. He's just not getting those receptions. So it's something to monitor. I mean, Quentin needs to figure things out, and I'd be curious to see if San Antonio thinks about making some changes. I mean, that's a storyline to watch. We'll see. But this team, this offense,
3 receptions, 19 yards. That's
on 8 targets. I mean, that's not ideal, especially if you're in an offense like A.J. Smith likes to run, where a lot of these passes, they're quick passes, they're short slants, they're short routes. So you want that target and reception percentage to be high.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, the production this week, like I said, passing game wise, totally a fall off and something that needs to be addressed. John Lovett continuing his upward trend though in the running game for the Brahmas. That's great to see. And quite frankly, any doubts about who was going to get that spot now, he is definitely the man moving forward. Has been a steamroller at the position. And that could also speak to the defenders' rush defense. Keep in mind, before coming in this week, they were second worst in the league on total defense. So I'm not saying that that's all of it, but credit, 153 yards on any team is impressive. So shout out to that. Hell of a performance this week. One of the top ones for one of the players in the league as well. And going to be a fascinating run to the finish for these two teams that we'll keep on discussing here moving forward. I think we have a great power rankings discussion we'll get to later on this too, just because of the movement or non-movement, if you will. Before we do that, though, got 2 other games on the docket that we're going to touch on. And again, I'm not trying to downplay them, but we did talk about these matchups for, again, St. Louis, Birmingham, as somewhat of possible trap games. And that's kind of the deal here. And I'll kind of circle back because we did touch a little bit on this before we dived into the recap with Michigan and Arlington. But Houston and St. Louis. Now, again, not much on the Houston side to talk about, but St. Louis, I was surprised to. Oh, somebody's got an alarm going off. We are. You okay?
Who's building on
Nick,
Safety
you need us
first
to call
before the show, Nick.
911?
I don't need you burning down on camera.
Hey, let me get Nosebuzz on the phone really quick. I think he can help with that.
My roommate's an idiot. It's cool.
I'll go down
Carry on.
forever. They'll go down forever on this channel. Anyway, what was I getting at? Yes, thoughts on the Battlehawks offensive production this week. Houston defense coming to play, or again, kind of reiterate as James started off a little bit here. Some worries on production heading into week 7.
I think one of their biggest issues, St. Louis, when it comes to their offense, the third downs. They've proven to be an issue in the past. This past week, they were 3 for 12. Now, granted, look at some of the numbers. I mean, A.J. McCarron still finished this game with 255 yards and 3 touchdowns. I mean, he played really, really well. But most of that came in the second half. I mean, Houston was doing an excellent job of covering those big plays down the field. I want to give credit to the cornerbacks. You know, a couple of those guys stepped up. I thought Cornelder made some nice plays. But the problem for the Roughnecks is their offense just has zero identity. And it's strange because they do have guys that are capable of making plays. I mean, Mark Thompson was the offensive player of the year in the USFL last year. You've got guys like Emmanuel Butler who have really stepped up in the wide receiver room this year. Cyril Grayson has looked really solid as well. But, you know, Reed Sinnett, obviously, I don't think he's a championship quarterback, but he can get you a win. Like, he should be able to get this team at least a win or two across this stretch. So similar to Arlington, I have a lot of qualms about the coaching there in Houston. I think there's some issues that, you know, the product on the field is a problem, but it's not just a product on the field that's a problem. There's much deeper issues there in Houston, and it starts with some of the staff.
I'll tell you what I think held St. Louis back. They rushed for -5 rushing yards. And obviously, is that a quarterback who got -37 on one play? I don't know what that's about. But either way, take that -30. Okay.
They
take that out of it anyway.
They ran out the clock and
Yeah.
ran
Okay.
the end zone.
Even minus
so
that,
30.
they still outside exactly 32 rushing yards outside of that one play. Like, this is one thing I talk about with the Birmingham Stallions all the time and why I think they're so good. It's because I think they're able to get consistent yards on the ground. I think they win the game in the trenches, definitely defensively. If you look at that D-line, they win the game in the trenches. Offensively, they're able to get push up front and they're able to move the ball consistently on the ground. That is what separates the Birmingham Stallions from everybody else in the league. And you look at this St. Louis Battlehawks team, they got all the weapons on the outside, but that doesn't mean a damn thing if you can't get a yard or two on the ground, more than a yard or two. But like, you get what I'm saying? Like, if you can't move the ball on the ground, you're going to struggle. And I think that's what we see right here is, you know, obviously A.J. McCarron's stat line looks good. Obviously Hakeem Butler tore it up, but then you look at the ground game, 8 carries for 18 yards for Sailors, 3 carries for 10 yards for Gallman, and 5 carries for 4 yards. Obviously A.J. McCarron's not going to tear it up in the ground game, but still, like, you're not getting production in the ground game. That is a problem, 100%.
Sounds like someone's
And
Mr.
you
Digits
hope
this
that,
week.
like, and you hope that, you know, the fact that they were missing their whole right side of the offensive line, that you know, if they can get those back this week, that could be a huge boost. I think that really hurt them with Fidel Alexander and Bushel Beatty both being out. But, you know, if they're out again, then that's something, especially at Birmingham, you know, that is, you know, a buzzsaw of a defensive line. You do not want to be missing 2 offensive linemen against them of all teams. So that could be an issue for certain this week.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that part I do hope, or for their sake, I do hope that they get a little bit healthier coming into this week in particular. But I would say Houston definitely stifling a bit of what has been an upward run game, I would say, for St. Louis moving forward. Kind of shocked me at how little they were able to produce in that department. And quite frankly, Birmingham is no different in that case. They also are very good against the run. Credit last week, I was actually surprised at the fact that Darius Victor had a few more opportunities to find alleys. We'll talk about that in a second. But something to keep in mind, because, I mean, I know we're previewing this, and it's like guys are still talking about last week, but this is like the matchup of the century type of matchup for us diehard fans coming up this week because of the two forces that are going to be going head to head and seeing who's the ultimate. As I'm doing my anime references and all that jazz, it's gonna be a good one. And I think that we look at that and we're starting to kind of nitpick some inconsistencies or issues that teams might have. So, like for example, and we'll kind of just pull this over to the Birmingham and the Memphis side here. 39-21 contest, not too much of a shocker. Adrian Martinez, my God, he just coming out and showing out as always. Anything that you guys identify, the injuries are going to be something I'll analyze, by the way, because Birmingham, I got to give praise to how they've been able to operate and kind of mix and match pieces over the years. But it was a damn shame to see Lorenzo Burns go down the way he did, and that's going to be a massive loss going into next week for him.
Yeah, just to touch on a couple of those injuries, Amari Rogers, he had exited that game as well. He should be okay. He had a concussion. I'm told that he should be good to go for this game against St. Louis. DeMarcus Gates exited the game. Still no official word on him. Lorenzo Burns did post to his social media. I also got word that he's doing okay. I highly doubt that he'll be able to play for a week or two, but the vibe I'm getting is that he could potentially return before the season ends. So hopefully,
what the injury was?
No, not 100% sure on what it was. I'm hoping that it was more of just a stinger and they were being cautious and, brought out the whole thing because, that obviously looked very, very scary on TV. So fingers crossed that they were just being overly cautious and it's not as serious as it looked.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And indeed, that was it was a shame to see. It's always a shame to see something like that happen on air. But glad to hear that he's doing much better than what most of us were worried about is good. But that's something to me, is I'm curious to see. The Stallions defense is no slouch. Credit, again, injuries stack up, Gates also should be fine, but still, that is to me the more important element I think is going to be seeing, how much can they be able to stop those outside receivers that St. Louis has. I think that's going to be my biggest question because they're gonna lock down on the run game, and honestly, I think St. Louis is going to play a similar plan where they're going to just say, hey, we're going to also not let Marable or Roundtree or Person do what they can, but how much of that's going to be an effect is having injuries that might linger for such a matchup.
Did you guys see what the Stallions ran for their 2-point conversions every play?
Yes.
Are you guys
Jordan
keeping into
Thomas?
that? Jordan
Yes,
Thomas, go beat the linebacker every single time.
That's just a classic example of Skip Holtz just knowing what you have to call in that situation. And Birmingham, it feels like sometimes in these games, especially when they dominate, they just like to toy with their opposition. It's just like, hey, if you can't stop us, we're just going to keep doing it. And you guys can't do anything about it. There was nothing they could do. And, it really made me laugh that one play where Jordan Thomas makes the catch and then he ran into the field goal post and it just starts shaking around and he's just looking at it. It's like that guy is a beast. We saw him make some serious plays with the Orlando Guardians last year. One of the few bright spots of a 1-9 team in the XFL. And now he's with the USFL champions and very well could be the UFL champions if this keeps up.
The third time they ran that was just so disrespectful because they were up 20 or 30 points and they'd already run it twice. And then they're like, we're doing it a third time. You got to respect the pettiness with that.
They just get their team looks like they're just having fun. I'll be honest with you. It's been like that. Honestly, more so than I even think maybe even the first 2 years of their existence. It seems like it's like nothing can go wrong for them. Credit that, like I said, the one game they had the matchup against DC was a rough go, but you can even chalk that up to the circumstances of the Lightning. Every team does have a bad game, but if that's a bad game, kind of hard to say where you can get worse at. It's going to be a fun matchup nonetheless. My thing is, analyzing Birmingham and Memphis. I think, for example, I can't beat Memphis down too much more. I've done what James has done with Arlington. I have expelled my Memphis disappointment this year. It is at a bedrock. There is nothing lower I can go. Credit better, slightly better protection this week. 3 sacks. Ooh, but nonetheless, run game still mostly non-existent. Yes, the numbers are a bit better this week, but that's very, very slight better in any regard. It's not there. This is a team that's not performing up to snuff, and unfortunately has been kind of a downward spiral too as well, and kind of still strange to me. Both them and Arlington are just the 2 most disappointing franchises this year. I just cannot believe, in particular, especially Memphis. It shocks me. It really shocks me.
And I'm glad you said that about Arlington, because the way people talk about Arlington is how I feel about Memphis, because Arlington's bad too, and they get the spotlight because they haven't won a game yet. But Memphis has just been so much more depressing because they have all these like notable guys who've been around for a few years, and it's just like it's not working, and there's not really anything they can do at this point. It feels like they just have to ride out this ship and then blow it up in the offseason because like with Arlington, it's like, well, yeah, they're struggling, but hey, they got some young quarterbacks and Perez is playing well. And there's some things there. There's a reason they're in all these games. They're not like some awful team, but Memphis is some awful team. There's nothing that's working for them. If they have anything that does work, it feels like it's like a 1-game blip. They'll have a game where Troy Williams plays really well and it's like, well, they lost, but Troy Williams, hey, that might be something. And then it steps back, or and it's just not coming together at all. And maybe that's partially on the coaching staff. Maybe that's, hey, maybe they shouldn't have just relied on known quantities. They should have gone out and got more Dawood Davises, who's been like probably the main bright spot on that roster through 6 weeks. But yeah, no, it's probably to me the least interesting team because of all those issues. And Cook is getting blown up on the first play was just. It was almost comedic at that point, after the first game.
I mean, Sam, a little extra for you here. Case has just gone through the ringer every single year. I don't know how a man attracts pressure more than any other person in the league than Case Cook is. He's a magnet for it. And we
like
thought
he
we
has
got away
sacked
from
me
it.
wrote on his jersey.
I mean, seriously.
It's brutal.
And for Memphis too, it's you don't have good protection, but you also just I think the coaching is an issue there as well. And looking at some of these numbers, right, they're getting blown out week in and week out. Every team that they play against is putting up double, sometimes triple the amount of yards, double or triple the amount of points. Case in point with Birmingham, 466 total yards to Memphis is just 220. And Memphis got most of those at the end of the game in garbage time with Troy Williams getting a march or two down the field. I mean, they had only 100 yards for most of that game. Look at the time of possession. It is identical. Birmingham with 30 minutes and 8 seconds. Memphis with 29 minutes, 52 seconds. I don't know how you, as a team, lots of times when we see blowouts, it's when one team has the ball for 40 minutes and the other team has it for only 20. This is equal time of possession, and you're losing by 3 scores. Like, it's just something that, in my opinion, is unacceptable. And it's 1-5. I mean, the record speaks for itself. Like you said, Nick, it's just so weird that a team with all this proven talent in the spring scene, they're just not getting it done. And I think, to your point, they needed to go out and get more NFL talent because that's what a lot of these teams did. That's what Michigan did. They brought in a lot of guys. Birmingham, 16 former NFL draft picks on their team, not to mention basically everyone on their team has been in the NFL at some point as well. So Arlington, I'd say Memphis had the same mistake. Arlington, they didn't improve their roster, just kept a lot of their old pieces. Memphis just took some of the decent pieces from Memphis and some of the decent pieces from the Breakers, which, yeah, in a 16-team scene, that's great. But when you cut down to 8 teams and you don't really improve the roster, it's not going to result in wins.
I mean,
here's the stat line. I'll just quickly say the stat line on Birmingham, 48 of 50 players have signed an NFL contract in their career.
Damn.
Zach Potter.
Yeah.
I'll say this. Memphis was able to move the ball. I thought they were moving the ball, at least in the first half, pretty successfully, but you cannot turn over the ball and especially against the Stallions, you got to get points. Like that'll kill you every single time. And they just can't get out of their own way.
That's on Cookus, who, in my opinion, his pocket awareness has not been on point this year. I get it. He's battered. He's bruised. The offensive line hasn't helped him out, but he's also not helping out his offensive line because he's held. There's so many points, and DiFilippo, you can tell his frustration on air where Case has guys that are open. He holds on the ball too long. Next thing you know, he's sacked or it's incomplete or something goes wrong. And that was twice this week where he fumbled the ball. He had a chance to get that ball out of his hands, and he held on to it too long. He loses the football, and it's a turnover on 2 drives that would have been successful. Sam, you look like you had something to say about that.
In the pocket.
Defend your guy.
I'm stuttering right now.
You can tell.
I love Case. There was times last year when he would hold on to the ball a little too long, and you'd watch the film back and you could see there was open guys down the field. So I do that definitely is something I think he does struggle with. I think he does struggle with making that decision, like throw the pass or like hit this guy, hit that guy. Like, I think that's something he may struggle with, but also his offensive line is terrible. And also there's a play early on in my breakdown this week, because I did do the Memphis Stallions game, where they're max protecting, but there's only 4. And now I don't know if this was a check that Case made, or I don't know if it was called from the sidelines, but they max protected. The Stallions only bring 4, so I don't know why you're max protecting. They're clearly trying to hit a shot down the field. Nobody's open down the field, but Case doesn't have a check down, so he takes a sack. And this might have been the play where he fumbled. I can't remember exactly, but it's like he's not making the right check in terms of protection, or his coach didn't get him in the right play call. But either way, it's not working out, and he was set up for failure from the jump. So it's like, it's just a lot of things aren't going right in Memphis right now.
That in particular for a quarterback has to be the worst nightmare, knowing that it's basically like an all or nothing play. There's no backup scenario to this. You're just hoping to God someone's open, because if there's no,
your running back and tight end are literally blocking one guy.
If there's no safety valve, you hope that there's an alley to run. If there's no alley to run, well, I guess you just hope that there's no bruises afterward. That's all you can hope for. Just take the L. That's what it is. If there's no openings in the secondary, you take the L. It sounds like a Madden play that in Madden would work, but this is real life. Some guys won't get open and max protect. I tell you that much. That's damn true. Sorry. 7 guys back there? No, sir. Memphis, I'll tell you that the new debate at the end of the year will be, it'll be seeing who is actually worse off now that we got matchups with Houston coming up again. Memphis and Arlington are going to come up. I hate talking about that stuff, but like that is what's going to happen. These are games that those guys will have to play. And I think they're better conversations than talking the maddening attendance discussion. I'll give you that much, because I don't like talking about it, quite frankly. I'm over it, but what do I know? That just pointing that out, that's all I can say, because Memphis is back in that talk. And I've talked to Memphis fans. I think they just want better timings. It's much like Birmingham fans. They just want better times for games. Jake, you've been in the same thing with where Michigan's been under fire. I'm just bringing it up here too, because I've kind of gotten over it. Like, hey, I don't know what to say to it. That's the thing. Everyone brings it up once a week, and all I do is I don't know what to tell you anymore. I just like watching football. Okay, I hope they come. I want these people to go to games, but I can only watch football. All right. I got a short life to live. I don't need to be talking about how many people are sitting in the stands while I'm enjoying a football game. That's all I can tell you people.
I mean, to be fair, at least the Panthers hit over 7K this week, which is up from week 4.
It is.
Or week 3 rather. But that's the silver lining. You definitely looked a lot better than Memphis did, both on the field and attendance wise.
Yeah, I'm hoping that works out. And for the sake, too, Memphis, by the way, remember, they're getting a nice renovation package that's going to get started working on this year, later in the summer. So, that stadium's going to get really great upgrades for the University of Memphis, too. Just saying. Hope it all works out. But that combo ain't going away. It's the only thing. Yeah, I don't know what to say to that. Sam, I got to be honest with you. I got to ask one question about the attendance thing just because it does drive me up wall, but I want to ask from the players' end. You obviously want people in the stands that are on your home team. You played with Philadelphia, so I get it. A little bit different scenario, but I mean, do you even pay attention to that as a player? Or you just, it's just game time. We just got to go.
Oh yeah. I remember before we went live, I was talking to you guys about FCS football, and I don't know if you guys really know about Montana football, but we do it big. 25,000 every week, packed out stadium, highest attendance, second behind Jackson State, behind in FCS football. I mean, we pack it out. So me playing not even on our home stadium ever, and then you can count all the fans on a couple of hands. Like it was definitely different. And that, I mean, obviously BYOJ, bring your own juice. But it would be nice to have fans. It's not something that you harp on, and it's not something that you're like, dang, I can't play if there's no fans. Obviously, you're gonna play, but it would be nice if there were some fans in the stands. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, Battlehawks players appreciate it. I know that for a fact, without a doubt. Anyway, speaking of which, guys, we gotta discuss something about the Battlehawks and a few of the other teams in the league. It's time for our power rankings, and I'll be honest with you, people, not really anything is changed, so to say. Here's our power rankings for this week for PFN. As we always do, the PFN crew votes on these after every Sunday match is complete, and we post them up here to you Monday afternoons. And as you can see, again, not much movement really. I don't believe any movement at all if I am recollecting last week, but the setup is as follows. Birmingham 1, St. Louis 2, San Antonio 3, Michigan 4, DC still at 5, Houston at 6, Memphis 7, and Arlington at 8. Open floor, guys. Discuss. I'll be honest with you. My personal thing for me, DC getting the win. Yes, that was, I think, incentive. I was wondering if I should move them up, but I'm finding it so hard to juggle between 3 and 5. Even though DC did get that win, they did split. I wanted to even consider Michigan moving up, but I wasn't 100% confident given that it was a last-minute field goal against Arlington. Maybe that's just me, but thoughts?
Yeah, I will just say that Houston did actually jump up above Memphis. I really thought that Memphis should have plummeted all the way down to the bottom. I'm with James, and I'm really confused as to why people don't think that Memphis is by far the worst team right now. But clearly, me and James are in the minority here right now.
I'm with you there.
Yeah, otherwise, I pretty much did chalk. I dropped Memphis down to 8 this week in mine, but I left everything else the same. Like, I thought about moving DC up above San Antonio, thought about the same with Michigan, but, I mean, San Antonio's still been more consistent. We'll see, if Dormady can find some rhythm here. As someone I saw earlier mentioned that Dormady really hasn't exactly played fantastic since that first half against Michigan, but, I mean, except for this last week, they've been winning. I'm still going to hold that 33-point loss over DC's head. I can't justify bumping them yet, and them and Michigan will sort themselves out this weekend. So I wasn't too bothered about moving anybody, but really couldn't find the justification to either.
Mm-hmm. I have 2 qualms with this list. I think Michigan has proven that they're a little bit better, and I would say more consistent than San Antonio right now. Michigan handedly beat Memphis last week. And look, the game against Arlington obviously was close. But Michigan played a good game. Like, they played solid football throughout the match. They were missing a couple of defensive pieces that I think really allowed for Arlington to have some success. You'd like to see more pressure on Luis Perez, but you got to realize Daniel Wise went to IR. That's a big loss on the line. You lost Frank Ginda throughout the game, and it seems like he's going to be missing some time now as well. So San Antonio, they beat Arlington very ugly. If Arlington had the offensive performance that they did against Michigan, if Arlington played the way they did against Michigan against San Antonio, they would have beat the Brahmas last week. So, in my opinion, I feel like Michigan, they've been more consistent as of late. And then Arlington is definitely the better team than Memphis. They should be number 7, and I think they even have an argument to potentially be better than the Houston Roughnecks. They've been in every single game. It's 1 or 2 play every single time they lose. And look, I know I've bashed Arlington a lot, but they're a better team than their 0-6 record reflects. That's for sure. I mean, they should at least be 2-4 if we're being honest. So I don't know. Look, Arlington's losses is purely on their coaches, but I feel like the talent is there for them to be higher than number 8.
And I appreciate your vote of confidence for the Panthers. I had just watched them in 22 and 23, and I don't have quite the same confidence with this being the first time that they've strung 2 wins together since the beginning of last year before they dropped 4 straight at home. So I'm still a little shy about being super confident. But so I appreciate you doing that for me. I get to.
Well, I think my kicker for Michigan is the defense has been really good. Took a little bit of step back this week, but I feel like that'll improve. They're just dealing with injuries. I think that was the bigger reason why they weren't as solid this week. And Danny Etling has looked like one of the most composed quarterbacks in the league. After those first couple turnovers that he had, whether it was the game against San Antonio or the couple of snaps he got when EJ Perry was starting in the previous games, he's protected the football. He's done a great job of keeping the offense composed. They haven't been perfect. But I thought he looked like one of the best quarterbacks in the league. His decision making is really good.
He's held onto the ball a little long for my taking. Took some sacks where he really didn't have to. He could have gotten rid of the ball. That's probably been my biggest gripe for Etling so far. But yeah, otherwise I have to agree. I think that he does give, us a shot, especially if he can feed Sims and Mariner, which he got his first touchdown this year in our. So I think that we'll see them take a step forward, but I'm still a little weary.
Yeah, it is kind of funny. We have 2 games this coming week that are going to prove some theories right or wrong on power rankings. By the way, because not only do you have Michigan playing DC coming up, but you also do have Arlington playing the Showboats this week to decide who I think will definitely be considered the worst of the worst here, one way or another. So fascinating stuff. For the Panthers' sake, I feel bad, Jake. When we did the recap of the game, I feel bad we didn't talk as much on the Michigan side about this. But my thoughts on Etling, by the way, a little bit more of a cool customer. Doesn't exactly seem to get flustered or need to have as much rhythm. They're still working out the kinks. Clearly, I can tell that too. They have not gotten it all the way there with him behind center, but every week has gotten better week over week. And I think that's got to be a great sign if you are Marcel Belfay setting this up for offense, and being able to say, hey, the RPO, and they've definitely dedicated even more to RPO than they were, I think, under EJ Perry personally, to where they've been able to say, hey, we can mix and match, Colburn in as well, a little bit better. Personnel groups, it seems to be better. They're getting and leaning on Marcus Sims and understanding that is your true number 1, and finding who's those ideals number 2 and 3 has been helping them a ton. And I'll be honest with you, James, on the Arlington side of that for last week, I thought that they actually, to me, played one of the better game plans they've had against the team, which was just take what the defense gives you. Clearly that's what led them to be able to stay in it and actually keep the lead for a good chunk of the second half. Just, missed opportunities and miscues have been their issue. And we'll see if that shines and they're able to overcome that against a team that also has just as many miscues. And as some of us do believe is worse as well. Any final thoughts on these rankings, guys? Like I said, Michigan, I think listening to you guys, to me, 3 through 5, I think we'll kind of have a final determinant. A lot of our voters are going to see what happens this week in particular as to what maybe shakes it up. Maybe it is that final proving moment for Michigan to jump them back to 3. Maybe DC finally has turned a corner, and if they get a win this week, now we're talking a complete a true power shift in the XFL conference, maybe for that 2 seed. Anything else that we're missing?
I feel like Nick might have some things to say about his defenders and where they might sit here with the 3-3 record. San Antonio's 4-2, Michigan's 4-2, but the debate is open.
Yeah.
Oh, don't forget the negative 36 point differential for a 3-3 team.
Yeah. But here's the thing: is I think if DC hadn't made the changes they did this week, I would absolutely be on your side of still like being out on them. I'll say first off that St. Louis fourth quarter was just everything that can go wrong going wrong. Obviously, it's not something that you feel great about, but it's something that I think that's not going to happen every week. That was just like it was like punt block, interception, 80-yard touchdown, like back to back to back. You're going to lose a game like that if all those things happen. But going forward, I like the changes they made. And I'm not in love with any of these three teams. I'm not in love with DC. I'm not in love with San Antonio. I'm not in love with Michigan. I think they all have their warts, and they're all clearly a cut or two below the top two teams who we haven't really even talked about here. But for DC, it's just right now, San Antonio, I think, is 5, and I'm pretty confident that they're the worst until they make a quarterback change. I don't see them getting above that, even with the talent surrounding them. And then it's like, okay, if I'm picking this week, which they're playing this week, so obviously this can flip, but I feel a little bit better about DC this week beating Michigan. So I went with DC, but I don't feel great about that, honestly. I think both those teams have positives and they both have negatives. And so like it's a strong visual to put DC at 3. But, I'm not going to shy away from that. I think they're going to win this week. And that's that. And it's the same reason why, no one really called me on it, but I have St. Louis above Birmingham because I think St. Louis is going to win this week as well. So those are my hot takes for the week, I guess.
Hey.
I think St. Louis has a clear shot. I disagree a little bit with Zach with what you said earlier of a gap there in talent. I think the talent is closer than meets the eye. I think that the largest piece of discussion here for St. Louis and Birmingham is going to be in the trenches, like what Sam talked about. Will Birmingham's offensive line see that same success? And will their defensive line get after AJ? Because if McCarron is getting rattled early in that game, it is going to spell a lot of trouble for the Battlehawks. That's going to be the key. Can they protect McCarron? Can they get a little bit of production from Sailors, from Durant? Well, excuse me, not Durant, from Gallman. It's a shame Durant is now on IR because Durant and Sailors were such a good 1-2 punch. And I feel the injury to Mateo has really hurt their backfield because now all the pressure's on Sailors. Wayne Gallman hasn't really been productive at all this season. That's a problem. That's a problem for St. Louis. I think Birmingham is the number 1 team right now. And for me, like it's always been, Birmingham will be number 1 until somebody beats them. Until someone knocks them off the throne, as good as St. Louis has been, St. Louis needs to go beat them if they want to take that number 1 spot. That's just my take.
I don't even think if St. Louis wins, I think Birmingham's still number 1.
Hey.
Seriously. I seriously think it. I think if Birmingham loses, I think they just turn number 1. Just because they need to lose the game. They probably don't even care. It's a out of conference game.
I see what you're doing here. Okay.
No, seriously. They could lose this game. They probably want to lose this game so nobody notices how good they are.
For the record,
quite the take.
Maybe I misquoted myself here, but I swore I used the talent gap thing between Houston and St. Louis and not Birmingham. Because clearly I don't.
Oh, I must have misunderstood you.
I definitely do not buy that there's a talent gap that's massive between the 2 top teams in the conferences.
Zach, I stand corrected. My apologies.
And look, if I'm wrong and lied to all of you there, you can go back and clip that clearly. So I'm standing on myself. But I was like, when I heard that, I'm like, wait a minute. I don't even buy my own take. That doesn't sound right.
Up there.
One thing I want to point out quick too, and Sam, since we have you here, Michigan is kind of high on the board for me just because we've seen their offense be more consistent as of late. I think Marcel Belfay's really found a groove with this team. He's found a rhythm with Danny Etling. Wes Hills has been producing. Matt Colburn has found a role. Colburn's obviously a guy familiar with. You're familiar with Marcel Belfay. You were with him last year. What would be some of your thoughts on the Panthers, why they're seeing offensive success with the things that Marcel does?
I think the concepts are very easy to latch onto. Like they're not hard to learn. Coach Marcel does a good job of coaching it. He does a good job of calling the plays. They're not hard concepts to grasp onto. You probably hear, if you listen to the broadcast, you hear a lot of the same calls throughout the game. So there's not a lot in the offense. It's not a super in-depth offense like some professional offenses are. And I think that plays to their advantage. Now, I think if teams start to catch on to some of the things they do that could hurt them later on in the season, I think that might be something that might have, pigeonholed us a little bit potentially last year. But I just think it's a very simple system, and it's easy for people to learn, and it's easy for the quarterbacks in terms of reads. It's easier for the receivers in terms of reads and in terms of, what your job is on each given play. So, there's not many intricacies into what your job is. And, I think a lot of times with professional offenses, they can get a little too complex, and the coach might outthink himself and might outthink his players and make it harder than it has to be. I don't think Coach Marcel makes it too hard for anybody to understand.
Yeah,
and I'll
and
add
with
on
Marcus
to that.
Sims, go ahead.
Well, I'll add on to that. Like, obviously, I have not played for Marcel at all, but speaking with some of the offensive players this week at the event, yeah, they mimic that exact same thing. I think one of the problems with Marty is he tried to do too much, made the players think too much, have to know too many things. Also, I think probably his attitude towards the players was probably not exactly what, player friendly. So that change is it, and simplifying things, not having as many plays, like Sam said, I think is probably, something that has helped the offense, at least from the conversations I had this weekend.
The way some of those Michigan guys talked about their offense and what they had to learn during training camp last year. Like, imagine this. I think training camp started mid-March last year. We didn't really start studying our plays until 2 weeks before training camp, or, I think we might've got the playbook a month before training camp. I guess some of the Michigan players had been going through that playbook since November or December before the season last year. And it was just a super complex offense. So many concepts that guys had to learn, so many intricacies within the offense. It was ridiculous. And the way some of the guys talked about it, I was like, that sounds like hell. So, definitely I would re-echo what you just said, Jake. And yeah, a lot of those guys had trouble with the offense last year, just the complexity of it.
Which, in my opinion, this is why we're seeing Michigan be a little bit more consistent offensively this year. Because last year, their offense was really hit or miss. I mean, 1 week, Josh Love would look really good. The next week, things were a mess. Things changed a little bit when EJ Perry came in at the end. And I know, Sam, I'm sorry to bring this up, but the Week 10 game where he comes in, leads into the playoffs. But he's never coming back on ever again. That's it. I'm for sure getting blocked now after that.
Been a ride.
But yeah, no, I'm with you on that. And one thing I want to bring up too quick is, do you see Marcus Sims kind of playing a similar role to what Corey Coleman did some of last year in that offense?
Man, I didn't even think about that till you just brought that up. Definitely. Now that you say that, I definitely see him filling in that role as Corey Coleman. But one difference is, I would probably say Corey was probably a little bit of a better route runner than Marcus. I think Marcus is more of just a burner. I mean, although his speed is ridiculous, and that is the biggest thing about him is his speed. But there's a few differences with who they are as receivers. But yes, definitely, right. I see him filling that role as Corey Coleman for sure. I didn't even.
It feels like he's filled that spot though as a wide receiver one that Marcel, when he wants a big play, he wants to target Sims. It's very 100%. Similar to what he was doing with Coleman last year.
100%. Yes. Wow. Great analysis by you, James.
Thank you. Hey, I had to make up with it after I brought up the what won't be mentioned again.
That's good observation. I mean, like I said, he's clearly leaning into him as big bulky target. Definitely is a guy that is showing he can not only get his excellent ball range and kind of locating catch, but also the dogs don't agree with me. And us.
That was Appa. Sorry.
Yeah, the cats. Oh, that's good.
But yeah, I mean, hey, shout out Marcus Sims. I mean, we've seen him do this week in and week out, where he's making plays not just through the air, but on special teams. We saw it last year in the game that won't be mentioned. We saw it again this year with the big. I mean, that return. If he doesn't get it past the 50, I don't think Michigan wins that game.
No. I'm not buying that. I wouldn't buy that either, or at least it would be definitely harder. Felt like very back and forth. Again, really good matchup that week. Oh my God, yes.
It's the animal episode, yeah.
The pets.
Let's go.
Yeah, this show's
For
gonna make
better
me
or
get a
worse.
cat.
I saw what Chris said about Ducky, so I had to grab. She doesn't like being held though.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, hang on. Let me get this highlighted here. Yeah, here we go. Because it's true.
Oh, I didn't even see that.
Freaking mastermind in the background.
He's scheming.
You know, I'm gonna be honest. Ducky, I'm just gonna crack a joke. I wonder if this is what Battlehawks fans think of you with the cat.
This
Mr.
is
Evil
me.
Villain.
Every time I get a Battlehawks tweet ready to tweet out, this is me.
And then the wine is sipped. Click.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice. Jeds, anything else we have to add before we conclude the show today? Great full cast today. Sam, again, glad to have you on and have you on in the panel discussion. It's been a great conversation with you and everyone else today as well for wrapping things up to week 6. Week 7 is going to be bonkers, I think. Good games ahead as always. And it seems very cliche to me to say good games because this whole year's had great contests, but I mean, we all are marking that Fox matchup on our calendar for all of us to tune in. It's going to be a big time, but anything else we have to add, people?
I think the one thing that's, the beauty of spring football is even the games that you don't expect to be great, like, Arlington and Memphis, I think that game's going to be pretty close. That's two teams that are fighting to keep their playoff hopes alive. Arlington, obviously, very low percent. Memphis probably doesn't have much of a shot, but there's still an opportunity there, and they just got to take it week by week. So I'd expect the game to come down to the wire. I think the Renegades pick up their first win, but I do think Memphis will put up a better fight and hopefully keep things closer than they have over these past few weeks. And then San Antonio, they can't fall into a trap game here. I mean, they can't afford to drop another one. DC is going to have a big game against Michigan, and San Antonio now, they're 4-2. Houston's 1-5, but Houston's still fighting for a playoff spot. They can't give up hope yet, so that should be an interesting one. I believe it's being played in Houston as well, so we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah.
Never mind.
All right.
No. Fine then. Keep your secrets. We'll talk next.
No. Okay, actually, no. I have. So Mike, I'm looking at the chat, and Mike Palco said, "Is Bart Andrews' offense any different than Marcel's?" I really think the offense we were running last year was more Marcel's because a lot of the signals a lot of the terminology that I hear when I watch Panthers games is very similar to a lot of the signals and terminology that we had last year. So I would say that even last year and maybe even the year before was more of Marcel's offense than it was Bart Andrews' offense, just based off terminology. Unless they both kind of adopted the same offense, it must have been Marcel's if Marcel is now with the Panthers and it sounds the same.
Well, and they do have previous work where not only were they together on the Stars, but Marcel was, I believe, a wide receivers coach with the Generals in the Spring League, which was head coached by Bart Andrews. So those guys go way back.
Yeah, 100%.
At least in the spring scene, anyway.
Yeah.
There's
Oh,
Julian.
The St. Louis fans that are in the chat.
man. I don't know about that one,
Well,
but it's going to take some time.
I know about that one.
Scars run deep. Ducky was in the freaking Cronky room when the decision was made. What do you think, Ducky? I think you should move. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're attacking.
Evil villain status. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this edition of ATU. Appreciate all of you tuning in. Check us out on our social medias at Around the UFL for all of the latest on our content. And check out, of course, our other shows as well at UFL Podcast later this week, Friday, 9 a.m. Eastern, to get you ready for the week that is ahead. And we'll catch you, of course, next Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, as always. As well. And hey, maybe we'll talk about future places that the league could go. That conversation's been heating up in a few circles, and we're definitely keeping an eye on it ourselves for PFN. By the way, pfnewsroom.com for all of the latest on the UFL and anything else that we do cover. And hey, go, as we've talked about with our own contributors, go check out Sam's breakdowns of games. Good stuff, by the way. Again, former player played in this realm of the game, and definitely something if you want a little extra in-depth conversation from someone that has seen the X's and O's on the field.
Oh, wait.
He's got you covered. What you
Chat's saying points. Forgot.
Oh my God. Yes, thank you. I'm sorry. It's been such a day. It's been a day myself. I will say no curtain behind the curtains for me. It's been something else. And thank you for saving it, chat. All right, here's the points. We'll tally these up later, of course, when we get the ref to put them down here. But I'll start with Sam. New visitor bonus of 10 points plus the standard 5 that I like to give out. So 15 for you going off this week, Sam. You hit the board. You are officially on the board of points. Not sure you'll be able to catch up, but hey, welcome along. You can now start.
We still don't know what these points are for. We're just giving points out at the end of every show. So
we're slowly figuring out what's going to happen. Something will come of this, but 15 points to you, Sam. Congrats to that. You are now officially on the list. Meanwhile, I'll go and just do counterclockwise here. Nick, I'll give you a crisp 7 this week, 5 for the standard, and 2. You get a win, a little bit of win and feel good for DC. Back more. I think in a realistic playoff conversation once again. So you get 2 points for that. Jake,
2 for 2 weeks off.
Yeah. Look, see, you read between the lines. I was trying to see if you knew what I was talking about. You're smart, very smart. That school teachings are doing well for you, my friend. Keep at it. Keep at it. Jake, 7 for us, by the way. Actually, you know what? Yeah, 7. That's fine. I like this. 5 for standard. We get a dub. I gotta give you 2 more. We get the dub this week. Another win. The 2 seeds looking pretty nice, I gotta say. Pretty nice in the USFL Conference. James, you as well, my friend. I give you 8 as well. For the way, 5 for the standard, plus, of course, going out there to Michigan to add on for the bonus. Michigan getting a win, I'll throw on 2. So 8 points for you, sir. And Ducky, I'll give you 8. Appa helps drag
one of my points to Hijack because he said something funny. It made me laugh. I'm not gonna say what it was.
So we got to add Hijack to the board? Is that what I'm understanding?
Yep. We need ref here, man. I don't know what's going on.
All right, hang on. I will be writing these down. I promise. I will pass them to the ref. We have our first.
You gotta give you 8 points.
You give me 8 point.
Yeah, because you're gonna give yourself 5, but everyone else got like at least 7 or 8. So I think you get 8.
You know me. I always give myself just 5. So thank you for that. But yeah, unless I'm missing something, I think that is the first audience point that has gone out this year. Congrats, Hijack. You've entered the board. I was not seeing this coming. But
Hijack has hijacked the point. That is fantastic.
Incredible.
I don't think Jake has smiled ever. Nothing to smile about.
Not since week 1.
The job's not done. That's the thing. He knows the mission.
He throws back a shot. That's a great way to end this one.
Yeah. Except I still need to come down from yesterday.
Oh, God. All right, guys. That's going to do it. Catch y'all later. See you next week at 6. Enjoy week 7, everybody. We'll catch you at 9 o'clock in the morning on Friday for me and the ref on a UFO podcast. Take it easy, everyone.
Arlington sucks.